Side of the House backs them. We will continue to support them, and that's what this is about.
Mr. Chair.
I call the honourable member Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is absolutely no doubt that despite the odd positive anecdotal story from a minister that we could probably count on our hands, this is absolutely a government in decline. And it's almost difficult for me to narrow down for a 5-minute speech the various ways in which we can see that this is a government in decline. But probably the biggest demonstration of that, the best example I could come up with, is that in order to return to budget surplus, this is a government who could do nothing else but sell all our stuff. The first thing that the government could do, the best option they came up with when they wanted to make sure that we got out of the red, was to sell our assets. And that is absolutely a relevant issue for us to continue debate today, because this is a government who is arrogant enough to absolutely ignore the views of New Zealanders. They have dismissed from the beginning poll after poll that has demonstrated it was a completely unpopular policy, to the point that the Prime Minister has arrogantly claimed time and time again that simply by voting for National, everyone said they were happy with assets being sold. That is absolutely untrue. More people voted for parties who didn't agree with asset sales than who did. So, Mr. Speaker, the message that needs to go out clearly in the midst of this referendum is that this is a Prime Minister who will interpret every vote that isn't cast as simply someone saying that they love his work. So everyone must exercise their democratic right if they would rather not have the Prime Minister skew their view. And we will continue to do our job by ensuring that this government listens to the voices of New Zealanders who time and time again have expressed their anger over these asset sales. But I would also ask people that they cast their vote on behalf of those who are unable to have their say, who aren't, for instance, eligible to cast a vote, but who are the generation that we continue to strip everything away from. They are, Mr. Speaker, a generation that is suffering in the wake of a government in decline. They are the no generation. The generation, we've heard every other label for a generation that is possible, the Y generation, the millennials, the C generation. This is the no generation. The no house, the no free education, the potentially no superannuation, at the way this government has no plan to ensure that their future retirement is secure. These are a group of young people who are suffering because this is a government who has absolutely lacked vision for what it is that they need in the future. There are 78,000 members of this no generation who are currently not in employment, not in education and not in training. They are the next cohort of the 15-year-olds now who are being measured by this PISA report who are failing. Now, the government may stand there and say, well, we had Anne Tolley say it's their fault. We had Hekia say it's not my fault. We had Stephen Joyce say it's everyone's fault. At the end of the day, we have not been in government for 5 years. The buck has to stop somewhere. And these have been young people who have not only been walking into a school gate where professionals have been stripped of professional development and had every change under the sun bearing down on them and being attacked by this government, they're also young people themselves who have been experienced deprivation which has negatively impacted on them. 270,000 children grow up in poverty in this country, Mr. Speaker. Now, Ms Bennett may stand up here and tell us about all the teenagers who are doing well, and I agree. There are some who are doing phenomenally well, who are wonderful young people, and we should be proud of every single one of them. But there are a cohort who are not doing well, and we cannot ignore that. The Youth 2012 survey told us 29% of young women in our high schools are self-harming. 29%. 21% have seriously considered suicide in the past year. It's no wonder that in this OECD report, we come 39th in terms of students' happiness at school. Now, that side of the House may dismiss that as not being a measure that's included in something like national standards, but an unhappy young person does not succeed. A young person who is depressed does not succeed. And 1 in 5 of our students in our schools are experiencing mental health issues. 1 in 5 is also being cyberbullied. All of these things are connected. Mr. Speaker, This is a generation who is suffering under the weight of a government in decline.
I call the Honourable Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today we've been discussing